Garmagad. This is a very specific question. And I know you're very familiar with this because there was a protest outside the Dáil Minister in relation to this, and I'm not sure whether things have moved forward or backwards, but specifically to ask the Minister the reason that mineral soils were included under the GAEC2, particularly the mineral soils and the percentage used, despite its intent, the intent of the regulation, to apply only to carbon-rich soils. And I fully support that, carbon-rich soils, that peatlands and wetlands.
Minister to respond.
So look, I'm delighted to get the opportunity again to speak on GAEC 2, as was raised here earlier in the House. Just to remind that GAEC 2 is a baseline requirement under the CAP regulations for the protection of carbon-rich soils. It is legally required to be put in place for 2025 as part of the conditionality requirements for the Basic Income Support for Sustainability, or the BIS payment scheme. The proposal which my department has submitted to the European Commission for approval aims to strike the balance between the vital protection of peatlands and wetlands and the farmers' right to continue with agricultural activity on the land. Regarding your question on the inclusion of some mineral soils, conditionality requirements must be controlled at a land parcel level. Trying to isolate parts of the parcel where activities can or cannot take place is not practical and would be very difficult to control. And if a farmer believes that their parcel should be split, they can do so by making their BIS application and doing it as part of that. If a farmer believes that a land parcel has been incorrectly included in the standard, they can appeal to my department. However, if 50% or more of the parcel is identified within the map, then it's within scope. To apply a different threshold than 50% for GAEC 2 would either bring in far more mineral soils into the standard or leave too much peat soil outside of the standard. So I believe this percentage strikes the right balance. And in terms of the impact on small farms, the proposal does not prohibit any of the common practices that are typical on these lands. So in answering your question, Deputy, there is a risk that it might be seen as this is something we really want to avoid, which I know is what farmers with carbon-rich soils, peaty soils, are feeling. But the truth is, for grassland, reseeding is still possible, as is maintenance of and repair of existing drains. New drains are also allowed subject to relevant planning legislation, which is already the requirement. I've been absolutely determined here that the proposal that went to the Commission, which has had extensive consultation with all of the farm organisations, was set down on a basis that day-to-day farmer activity on this land would not change. This is a baseline conditionality of the BIS. It is not a designation. It is nothing more than just that as part of this CAP strategic plan.
Deputy Connolly, followed by supplementary.
I understand the baseline conditionality, and I'm no expert on this, let me say, but I've listened carefully to what they're saying, and it would certainly seem on the face of it that small farmers are being disproportionately affected by the percentage being employed. And so I'm informed, and I only can tell you what I'm being informed, that you've decided, the department has decided that 51% of the parcel, if 51% is peatlands and wetlands, then the entire land falls under the GAEC2. That means 100,000 acres of mineral sites are captured under that. That wasn't meant to be captured. And then, on the other hand, by using this percentage, if 49% is peatlands, then they're excluded. So that takes 200,000 acres of carbon out of it. Now, I preface it by saying I'm no expert, but I certainly think questions have to be asked and answered in a way that reassures the small farmers who clearly think they're going to be disproportionately affected compared with the larger intensive farmers.
I've dealt with the INHFA. They've proposed alternative wording in a footnote. They've asked me to try and include. I've included that in a proposal to the Commission. So I am working with them. It is not the Commission require us to put it in. They then audit it afterwards, and if we're wrong, if we can't control it, then there comes the disallowance. We could be in breach up to the value of €100 million fine recurring on the single farm payment if we get this wrong. So we have to have a small controllable area. The alternative, Deputy Connolly, to having a 50% peat is to have 100% peat in the land parcel. That would bring in 880,000 hectares of mineral soils. So I'm striking the balance right here, while also saying that farmers' activity will not change. Their day-to-day activity can continue. This isn't a designation like some people outside of this House are scaremongering about. I want to reassure farmers of that their day-to-day activity will still continue.
Deputy Connolly.
No, I wasn't suggesting
I know, I don't think you were. And I don't think the farmers that were up protesting were scaremongering either. They were clearly setting out their concerns, and I've set them out here as best I can, and the 2% is being used. And so if you use the percentage for the mineral soils and the percentage for the wetlands and peatlands, I think this could be clarified very simply. I take you in your bona fides what you're saying, but the farmers are telling us in serious representations that they're worried that they'll be particularly affected on the west coast of Ireland, Galway, Mayo, Donegal and so on. And I can only listen to them and do my best to understand it. And it seems to me there's huge scope and flexibility for you to comply with the regulation to protect wetlands and peatlands while not including the mineral soils that's been included. So you've had a meeting, I think, with them. Is there another meeting scheduled that will clarify this so that we avoid continuous misunderstanding?
And back to Deputy Connolly, your point around the smaller farmers. The impact of smaller farmers, conditionality is applicable to all farmers regardless of size. However, those with farms that are less than 10 hectares in total area are already exempted from controls and penalties of conditionality. And finally, on the point of an appeals mechanism, there will be an appeals mechanism through my department which farmers can avail of.